Thanks, everybody. So I never came up with a title slide for this. The reality is, it's important for the content. It's not important for the title. The reality is, emergency calling is not something you should make fun of, but we all have to have fun in life. So here's our suggestive title for this presentation. Thank you all. So, Aaron Steele, I work for a company called Softel. We've been around for about 30 years. We play in the contact center space, the phone space, and the AI space. I'm giving here a presentation about 911. Eric Marcy is doing another presentation tomorrow. You should go to his session as well. He has a ton of content. As he shared with me, he's got 72 slides he's going to try and get through in an hour. But if you know Eric, he may be able to actually do it. So, I want to thank all our sponsors and partners of this conference. This thing doesn't go on without them. That's the reality of these community conferences. I've been coming to this thing since it started, and I'm super appreciative of all these sponsors for helping. Here's the overall agenda we're going to try and get through. I may be too fast. If you've got questions, please ask. I want this to be interactive. If you've got, again, you got questions, you want to understand how I think about this and why, ask, we'll get into it. Okay? The reality is 911 services in the United States have changed. When we think about this, 911 services used to be you would call and they knew exactly where you were because you were calling from a landline in an office. You were physically tethered to the wall. They could guarantee that that phone was where they knew it was. That's why ELIN databases existed, because those companies could transmit that level of information to the PSAP about exactly where that extension was, how you routed somebody to it. In the world of mobility, whether that mobility platform is Teams or Zoom or WebEx calling, or even a VIA with the extensions to do a VIA mobility, those rules do not apply. Then we have incidents that create new laws. Your world of Kerry's Law and Raybaum's Act that change the way this happens. And then we get into true mobility on your cell phone and what that means for you. So, as I said, mobility changed everything. And the reality is, for companies who are implementing emergency calling services, which they are required to do, right? It's no longer possible to stick a sticker on the phone that says, do not use this phone for calling 911. That's what Raybaum's Act and Kerry's Law have done, is if there's a phone on the wall, if there's a phone connected, it must be able to be used to call 911. And explicitly, 911. You cannot require the 9 to dial 911. You can accept it, but you cannot require it. Okay? And the reality is, for companies who are implementing emergency calling services, it requires a strategy to be compliant with these. Whenever I go and talk to customers about emergency calling, the first thing I tell them is, I am not a lawyer. You have lawyers who work in your jurisdiction who can help you interpret the laws in your location and make sure you meet those laws. I'm going to give you the reasons, the strategy, and the method to achieve those. But if you live in a place that has you must identify to the cubicle, I'm not here to interpret that law for you. Your lawyers are. It's a law. Talk to the lawyers. But the reality is, if you're implementing 911 in a location that has that requirement, you need to make sure you understand those as the IT pro and how you can achieve compliance with those laws. As I said, Carey's Law requires that direct 911 dialing and the ability for on site notification. So, with that, you've got two pieces you've got to hook together. You've got to hook together both a provisioning of accurate information into the system and a configuration working with your local on site security services to achieve local on site notification. Raybaum's Act requires a dispatchable location be transmitted. Again, that interpretation of the word dispatchable location varies by location, but it means you've got to get somebody to a close enough location. And then mobility brings the challenge here. When we talk about mobility here, I'm not necessarily talking about their cell phone. As much as it pains me to say, when was the last time you saw somebody fire up their Teams app to dial 911 on their cell phone? Right? They didn't. They fell and their phone or their watch dialed emergency services using the native dialer, and it went out and it sent the information. The reality was, in the world of E911, enhanced 911, even that cell phone call transmitted GPS information if that local PSAP can accept it, right? Because they're needing to triangulate where that cell phone is in space because it's mobile. When we talk about Teams and mobility for your users, that's why your addresses get GPS coordinates tacked onto them when you upload them, because it uses that as an additional method of validation that the address is correct. Okay? It's also why in Teams, they've added that little red icon when your address isn't correct or is a guess, because we don't consider that a validated address, so it needs to be checked. Will we send it if you place a 911 call? Yes. Will it also go to the ECRC? Yes. Right? Because somebody needs to validate what that addressable and dispatchable location is. The reality of enterprises is organizational drift. You've ever worked in a business, you've ever implemented what is called your configuration management database. You've got that authoritative source of what every little piece of infrastructure we've got is. And you finish that project on a Tuesday, and on Wednesday it's wrong. Right? Unless you've developed the processes, the tools, the systems to keep those things updated, you're not going to get that accurate, updated information into your calling system either. There are a number of vendors of your network infrastructure who provide for these. Juniper has their lovely system called Mist that can try and do network level address correlation CMDB information for all your Juniper switches and APs across your enterprise. Cisco has their own version. But how do you get that into your calling system? Right? How do you take that data that is theoretically updated in a format into your phone calling system, into Teams, as an example, in its location information service database, the LIS, as we talk about it. Jamie, I think you remember, I think that I remember, Jamie, you telling me a story about when MSIT was implementing wireless in some buildings, and they did silly things like wireless access points being put behind ducting. And therefore, the wireless signal now served the floor above it versus the floor below it that it was supposed to.
Sorry, shots.
So as you're going through and doing these, truly understanding what that means from a network perspective. It's easy enough to define where a wired network cable goes. Once you start getting to wireless access points and Wi-Fi configurations, now you're starting to get to a best guess level of information. Because the reality is that wireless access point that's sitting there against that ceiling, in fact, may and will be sending about 30% of its signal up a floor because of where it's mounted, right? I'm going to get into a couple of nasty terms here. VPN and cloud proxies. Play naughty with address information and subnet information. Today, there are plans by teams to make that better, but I don't think that's real yet. So if you've got companies who are going down the road of always on VPNs and cloud proxies, you need to have that conversation with them. You're likely breaking the law because you cannot accurately deliver address information for your users based on the fact the subnet can't be detected as inside the building because you've just defined an always on proxy and we're detecting you as coming from Cloudflare or whoever it is. Right? If your subnet, the way Teams, Eric has a ton of detail about this. I don't go into all the detail, but the way Teams detects your address, that very first thing it does is checks if the subnet is in the known subnets list for the company. Yes.
We got these.
Yep.
Now maybe
Uh-huh. Yep.
the database. Why again? It's their
Yep.
wireless all plan.
Yep.
In those cases, there a way to say the client may log it all the way up. They don't take your address. Right?
Nothing in the config that I know of. No. It'll show an exclamation point. That's as far as it'll go. And it just is the case that if you dial with that exclamation point, you're going to get routed to the ECRC.
So if the user doesn't take the extra step of updating their address, the company does not let that team admin center spend something liable for that user not doing that.
Talk to a lawyer. I am not a lawyer. The reality is, depending on the company's phone company, they may in fact get a bill for that from the phone company for the route to Interado. That was not planned.
Easier.
ECRC. So ECRC, Emergency Services Response Center. The thing that happens is it in North Dakota? I think.
It's one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The Emergency Call Relay Center. So a lot of phone companies have scenarios where if you place a call out through their service and it has to route to the ECRC to be determined which public safety answering point or PSAP to which it should route, they will charge you about $125 per incident. Part of the reason that it's intended to be kept up to date. But no, there's no way you can do that, as far as I know, of preventing a call. Again, preventing a call now, you've gone against the other acts, right? You're saving money, but you're potentially costing a life. So they tend to go on the side of save the life, screw the money. Right? To make this work, Teams requires these basic three things. You need a network mapping. Again, that network map is what are your egress access, what are your egress IPs, which if you deal, who here, anybody deal with higher education, deploying out to higher ed? Yeah. They have an interesting challenge when it comes to public IP address because the vast majority of them got allocated class A's and all of their things, though they are firewalled off, their devices have a public routable IP address. It's fun, Jamie. It just means that you're putting class A's as the subnet. There's not a solution that I've come up with that isn't all of their IPs go into the known subnet range. Because they don't proxy out. They don't have a thing where they route across a specific set of IP addresses going out. I've got a publicly routable address. When I go out through the firewall, it creates a NAT state for me, or it creates a session state for me through the firewall that allows return traffic, but it is my IP address that is sourcing that out. They don't worry about NAT pools because they don't have to NAT, because they got allocated a class A or a class B when the internet was founded. It's a little bit of a different problem, but so network mapping. This is
running one that after their campus, non-app campus that
yep,
together.
yep. With that, it's a little easier because now you've got a known set of IP addresses you can put into that Teams configuration. Okay. On your network mapping, I will tell you, most jurisdictions don't require you to get down to the switch port. Almost all of them you can comply by getting down to the chassis ID of the switch. BSS IDs of all your wireless access points. IP addresses across your buildings. One very nice thing that the Teams product group did was they gave you a set of templates that, as long as you can understand Teamsese, you can put the data into those templates and get it uploaded. But you have to understand that part of what you needed to do ahead of time was define all your sites and all your addresses, because then you have to pull out the GUID that is that site to put it into your database to map that up. But for a manual process, those downloadable templates are very good. But they are a manual process. As you go through and do this, what you will want to figure out is, how can we keep that continually updated? As things change, unless you're going to implement very rigorous ITSM policies or your CMDBs, you're not going to get notified from the network team when they change a switch. It's just going to change, and everything from their point of view works exactly as it did before. Because, hey, it passes traffic, it routes to where it needs to, it's got all the right firewalls on it, just the hardware chassis ID changed. Why do you care? Well, I care because now I don't know where your people are. Let's see, back. So, the location services, that's that piece of uploading all your addresses and validating them against the Master Address Street Guide, the MASG. And then there's the piece of, how do you actually route those calls out? In a lot of corporations, you've got more than one path out. How are you going to route those emergency calls? Do you route those emergency calls out the local path? What if the local path is down? You've still got to route them out. If they route out over a different path, is your emergency provider going to be okay with that? Are they going to be able to route it to the right PSAP. Are those things compatible? If you have centralized routing versus local routing, if a person in a remote location routes out through one of your centralized routing partners, are those calls going to go? So you just have to think about those things. Does your carrier have a specific flag on your account to enable dynamic 911? Lots and lots of carriers, when you buy the service from them, even for Teams, be it Direct Routing or Operator Connect, the flag on the service out of the gate will be static 911. They will define a physical address for all of the numbers they put into that service, and that is the address they will send when a 911 call goes out, so that they are sending something, right? 'Cause the worst thing is you send absolutely nothing. I talk about compliance. Again, I am not a lawyer. This is compliance from the point of view of you are trying to do everything you can as the IT professional to ensure that this data is updated and accurate as you can. You got a question, Jamie? I see your face as you having a question. Yeah.
Oh, no, right. You uh, just trying to understand what it's so orders of magnitude are and
Yeah.
why the ring station is about to
Collide into the moon. Yeah, sorry about that.
means
Yeah.
it's not hate to make you do that. Have the right here's Aaron has
I did it. I did it with. I did it with my toes, Jamie.
Alex.
Yeah.
This one action who wants to use that venting. Yeah, this doesn't exist. Idiot.
Hmm.
Want to
Believe the government owns the MSAG.
who
Yeah, I don't actually know how you get an address updated in that.
think
Yeah, I believe it. Yeah, as you get new. Eh? In theory, right? In theory, your local PSAP, as if uh, a new subdivision is built, in theory, the owner of that subdivision should be responsible for contacting the PSAP and telling them, "Hey, we've got these new 12 addresses in this space at this geo coordinate, and that is where you should route calls when they come from those addresses." Yeah. But if you have a building that isn't in that for some reason, yeah, okay. Yeah.
I've noticed in this stuff too, when well, never keep that that when I fill in the address,
Yeah.
that the street type suffix getting added to street name. So street name, like
Yeah. Yeah.
Main street name rather than May and an S. Yeah, yeah.
That is about the validation against the MASG. So it's the same thing that happens when you put in on, if you shop online and go to and shop through Shopify or something, you will see that you type in an address and they say, "Hey, would you like to use this address instead?" Where they've corrected things like the spelling of street, ST to street, or they've put in your, yeah, your 5-digit zip code to your 9-digit, right?
So should we not be using the recommended autocorrect?
Oh no, you should. You should be using what the recommended correct is, because it's basically found your address, compared that against the master address street guide, and the format from the MASG is what you want to use.
But when I use the recommended,
Yeah.
putting the ST as street that's like that there street. Or like, I don't know, Bristol Cone plate.
Yeah, yeah,
The word place is part of the street.
yeah,
Just it's suffix like that, not the street.
yeah. The division of that, of all those fields versus what is sent, is more the problem here than where those things put in. As long as they're in there, you're just fine. You don't need to worry about where particularly where those types of fields fit in the interface.
Because the problem that in the Senate that look like the product emergency
Yeah.
the emergency gate guys here it's using the yeah.
That is a problem on the Interauto side where they are still referencing things like ELAN and addresses that were given by a human and not validated against the MASG or were validated against an old MASG. Yes.
Big thing because you have to be beyond correct because like
Yep.
flat cat
Yep. Yeah.
holding the key where you're trying to put that on the find that the correct just use that that I think that's about why you think that
That's what I've done. Where I can't find a street address, but I can find accurate latitude and longitude. Yes, I put in the information and I manually put in the full detail latitude and longitude into that. Yes. One of, one of the problems I have with the Liz database is it's very hard to audit changes. When you talk about auditability, your systems, your tools, your processes, you should have a way to be able to audit what changes you go into that so that you can do things like report if something goes wrong. God forbid somebody dials 911 and the wrong address information goes out because somebody updated the Liz database for some reason. And now your legal team is asking you, the IT guy, hey, why did we send the wrong information and somebody died because we're being sued? Right? So if you implement a tool or a process, make sure your tool or process have audit and traceability in them for the changes they are putting into the Liz database. That is my recommendation for you. Yeah, yeah, please.
you talk to customers, recommend to customers a proactive, like every period of time, what calls, for 10% error locating. Well, that's
Mm.
close to that.
Yes, in general, the recommendation that I've been giving to customers is first and foremost, uh, use the 933 service as the validation it's planned for. And yes, on a quarterly basis, pick 10% of your population or 10% of your locations and try those 933 calls and see if they're sending out the address information you expect. Right? The interesting one recently, I don't know if anybody else saw this, but recently Teams had a little bit of an issue where it was dropping your address information for people who were remote. But then if you tabbed off and on to the calls tab, it would eventually refresh. I saw this working from home, and a number of my EDU customers saw this, and I had a couple of them open cases, and Microsoft said, "Oh yeah, it's a known thing. It's just a UI bug. Deal."
Yeah. I can't do that. They did that like result
Yeah,
when you
yeah. They don't like that answer. No, they're like, our users are going to hate that answer, but it's the answer that we got, so deal with it. So yeah, from an auditability perspective, that is a method to achieve a level of auditability on your data. Yes, 100%, right? And quarterly is generally a good practice for this. Yeah,
reporting
yeah.
doesn't yeah. Yeah.
It, I think the data is there, but again, I don't think they have any built-in reports or auditability about that Liz today.
It reduces down to the audit.
Yeah.
And as snap it on
Yeah.
audit
There is an admin audit log. Yeah.
and the service should make a line on the audit.
but parsing that.
Little try to search.
Yeah.
And every time I said, "I'm calling you about what?" Well, not this particular type of cheating. It showed up in the op.
I admittedly, I have not looked because the reality of it is, for the most part, it is onerous to search that admin audit log to try and find who removed, this user removed that piece of address information from the Liz database, right? We at Softel took a tack with our tool, which is we audit in our tool that pushes into the Liz database for that purpose. Yes.
Yeah, I was seeing you looking at teams. That's like a part where your team administrator are always coming there and updating switch on the things locked out or whatnot. They're staying on top of the audit network change switch, and they don't not change not updated. Right?
Those are also, that is things, again, that's configuration drift in your environment. That is the definition of configuration drift, right? As you are implementing these services, you need to make sure you've got processes or tools in place to be able to handle that configuration drift. They, they don't like it when you say that. Microsoft has been trying to tell every network admin it is the network's fault since the days of OCS 2007.
Is it select
Or maybe even LCS.
it's not me about
Yeah. Right. We got the magic codec.
it all about
It's your network. It's got to be your network. Yeah.
then you see that have you track that and then you go back groups of well,
Yeah. Yeah.
I got to get about that. That's
Remember, so here's a good thing to remember. Only a full Teams admin can deal with address information. Use principles of least privilege. Ensure that the right people have full Teams admin versus the people who don't need full Teams admin get telephony administrator or get communications administrator. There are other problems with that, but you have methods by which you can restrict or pim up your Teams admin account so that it isn't a regular occurrence, that people are going in with that full Teams admin control, be able to do those things. There are methods to make it less likely that they're going to do that. Yeah. There's no money to be made in that.
it's that
Yeah.
actually maybe what makes it
But buy Teams Premium, and then you just get CallQ's app, and you can delegate it all out. What piece there? So that's a whole nother thing. What piece of CallQ's you can do as different things? Yes, there's things. So in fact, yes, you have that problem with CallQ's. Yeah, there is a conundrum there, right? Yes. Not sure I have a solution. Yes. Mhm. Mhm. Jamie?
Record talk about myself.
Yeah. I not right yet. There's an admin report that's out sooner now, but not anything that I was doing. Yeah. Yeah. All good. Thank you, Jamie. Okay. Getting down into mapping the enterprise. Understanding your subnets, understanding how they split, understanding the difference between your class A's, your class B's, your class C's, how those split across, where you've got /128s, where you've got /129s.
That
where you've got IPv6,
that
right? Because the reality is, in fact, if you look at the statistics, more than 50% of the internet traffic is now pure IPv6. People are going down that route. It is the case that that number is higher on the weekends when people are home than when they are in the office on the weekdays. It is the case that we are getting to IPv6 deployed in enterprises. So, mapping those subnets, understanding the real way your subnets are broken out. Because if the subnet mask you've defined in your Liz database does not match the subnet mask those users send, we're not going to match them. Making sure you get your BSS IDs in there, making you get your switch chassis IDs in there, making sure they actually match. That's again back to that 933 test, because Teams won't prevent you necessarily from uploading data that won't match.
that first big guy, repeat guy,
Yeah.
that, you know, that here's what the network had me. Oh, oh, I heard you never, yeah, that's like, that's it, yeah,
Yeah.
30 or
No, they're in fact, I believe, at least four different location databases inside of Microsoft that if you're using the full Microsoft stack, you might load data into. There's a locations data, there's a list data, there's a CQD data, and there's a Microsoft Places data. I believe there are actually four of those, and having talked to the Places product manager and Jamie and any number of people, there is a plan that is sometime in the next, we'll call it millennia, to get to a single unified data store or all of those. But it again, back to it doesn't make anybody any money, so nobody's investing in it. I don't work at Microsoft anymore, so I get to say these bad things about them. Ah, yeah. I talk about this from the dynamic location model because the reality is every time that call is placed, we're checking the Liz, we're checking that data, we're deciding if that call is accurate, if that piece of data is information, and then we're sending that out, packaging it up, putting it into your PIDF flow, and sending it out, right? A couple of things that aren't in the presentation that I want to make sure everybody looks at. Specifically, let's see where. Oh, hey, look, that one called device. Teams did a very nice thing for everybody on this plan. They made it so for all your common area phones, if you define an address on a common area phone, it is trusted and explicitly sent out as a validated address. It's a great thing. Do it. Put addresses on your common area phones, those things that don't move. It makes it just such an easy thing for you that you no longer have to worry about. Because guess what? For the most part, people aren't picking up those common area phones and moving them from location A to location B. For the most part. I am not a lawyer. The problems realistically with with manual processes for doing this is which is why I would advocate you look into some level of automation. Is they're slow, they're error prone, and they're not scalable. I would advocate you look into a product like ours at Softel called SafeCall, or any number of the other solutions that live in this space. Okay? I don't want to make this a sales pitch for our product because it's not. We have a product that can do this for you. It connects to the Liz database. It uses Graph API permissions. It can push that data in. It pre-validates it. It has the audit log. It does all this stuff, and it can source from Juniper or Cisco, reformat the data, and upload it. It also has its own RBAC in it, so you don't need Teams admin. And you give your local network admins in the local sites access to the tool, be able to put data in there, and as a workflow in there so that you can have somebody else approve the change they've made before it goes into the service. Yep. But generically, what I will tell you is if you've got a large enough deployment of teams that you're really worried about configuration drift, not a 50 user company with one switch kind of thing, you should look into some strategy for automating this. Right? Got a question?
Okay.
Oh, it's a toy rocket. It's hanging in somebody's in somebody's room. What any good tool you implement should do, what it has capabilities to do. It should be able to do a level of auto discovery, meaning discover what is in that configuration source that it's pulling from. It should be able to normalize that against the right MASG and format it properly to push it into Teams. Again, not a sales pitch for our product. Any product you choose to do to automate this, in my mind, has to have those bare minimum criteria. Otherwise, it's not going to meet your need. Yeah.
Is your product actually created yours yet? Isn't populate MERS yet? Place with yet?
We, in fact, can do all of the pieces. So you can use our tool to enter the data. We validate it against the MASG before it gets pushed to Teams. You can put sites and subnets. You can put physical addresses. You can create all the sub items in our tool and then sync in from a source all the other network pieces and join them up to those and then push it all in.
Situations like where you've got just
Yeah.
do you let them or start waiting for responding?
That's still a manual effort because that's on the we aren't yeah that is on the network layer. We're taking the information from the network layer and transforming it and pushing it into Liz. Yeah, it's the layer. We're the connector, the glue between your actual network layer topology thing and Teams and its format in Liz. Talked about this, making sure your plan handles remote and hybrid workers. Sure your people get the training they might need. Understand what happens when they call 911, right? What that's going to mean, how that gets handled. I know a lot of companies who have gone down the road of figuring remote work on Teams, addresses get information, addresses get updated. And when somebody calls 911, they're calling from their cell phone. Right? Yes, I'm not going to tell you don't deploy it out to your remote workers. Turn on the flag in remote work. Make sure everybody gives permission to Teams to use your location access. Push that out with Intune if you need to. Let users know that that alert is going to pop up the very first time they fire it up and that it's an okay thing because we expect this. But the reality is, I would say most organizations, you're rarely going to get that call from their Teams client. Right?
Is it
Yeah.
team can run every that still the
Not that I know of. I don't. I think you could run something on the Intune side to see if, because Intune can control that permission, you could see if Intune is managing giving Teams that permission, but nothing on the final flag in Teams that is allow Teams to access my location for emergency calling, that slider. No, I don't think there's any report for that today. Jamie, feature request.
And we just
Yeah, right. It's not my problem. No, 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 no. They're talking about the slider in Teams. There's a slider in Teams. Allow Teams to access my location for emergency calling. Not the not the permissioned one in Windows.
but that's right.
Yeah.
All this cascade. It's changed that.
Yes.
To the way that we think about
Privacy and permissions. Yeah, yeah. So
like a one and done kind of thing, right?
yeah,
Or yes, then they don't
correct. They could go back and change it, but they don't get prompted. So yeah, they will get a red.
the red thing and what they got it. Right. But they give the address.
No, it doesn't prompt them to change it again. It lets them. If you turn off access to Teams for emergency calling locations, it shows red. You can enter information, but we no longer ask your GPS chip on your computer what to do.
And then that's the
Yeah.
30% of your use might have not done that.
Yeah.
That it's like a bank, right.
Yeah. I don't think there's anything that's existing today. Again, you probably can get a good set of that from Intune on the Windows side, but it won't go all the way into Teams and that final thing on the exactly. On-site response. Yeah, I've only got 13 minutes left, so thank you. Um, on-site response and security workflows. So this is everything from, great, you've done all the stuff in your network. Have you done the security desk configurations? Do you understand how that works from a point of view of when they can be muted, when they can be unmuted? Are your local security people moved onto Teams? Do they have a plan to move onto Teams? Do they rather use walkie-talkies? Are they going to be called on a gateway that connects to a walkie-talkie, and that's what they're listening on to? Those considerations are important. You need to get them configured for the local office. I know a lot of companies who have local security personnel, local response personnel, and they want those people to be notified if an emergency call is made. Because the reality is, as much as I want to say to the PSAP, it is cubicle C13 on floor 12 in building QPR. When they go to the address that's 123 Main Street and they say, I need to get to building QPR, building floor 13 and buildings and office C13, yet I have somebody who actually knows what the hell that means to get them there. Right? So notifying the right security people at the right local response authorities for that business is important. So get that configuration deployed into Teams, get it tested, work with them to understand what it means when they get that notification, what pieces of information they will see on that notification, how that notification flows, what bridges they have, what recourse do they have, right? Test your calls, audit what's in Liz, download, right, as much as you can what's in that Liz database and do it. If you can't audit it some way else, audit what's in there and do, as Jamie noted, quarterly level network audits. Is everything working the way we expect it to? Ensure you establish this governance model. Again, we're thinking about this as an overall overarching process. So you have to have a governance model in place for how are we going to manage this? Who's going to own it? How are we going to handle change control? How are we going to document it? Do we have sponsorship in the network team? Or are we just telling the network team what to do and they don't like that? Right? So involve the network team and help them come to grips with, in this world of VoIP, you are going to have an impact when you change that. Right? They were able to get out of that world when it was old school wires in a wall that they didn't have to deal with. Putting it all together. Map it as much as you can, automate it, and validate it. Right? Simple process if you think about it that way. it's a complex process when you get down into the weeds. Summary for you. I remember Thomas Binder having this method for his presentations. He starts his presentations with his agenda and he says, I'm going to tell you all of this. And then he ends his presentations with, and I've told you all of this. These are the things we talked about, right? The reality is it's dynamic in the world of cloud voice, whether it's Teams or Zoom or Cisco or any of these other 8x8, Ring Central. You should think about these things. Okay. Compliance depends on accurate, dispatchable location. That's what those laws define. You want to be in compliance, not with a policy, but with a law. You need to do the right things. Teams can and will detect on network location-based data. Reality is manual processes for this do not scale. You can try and keep it updated manually, and it will fall down. Look into some level of automation. Governance, testing, and audits sustain your compliance. So I'll make sure there's some notes and documents about some of this stuff in the presentation. And thank you.